Well, hello everybody, this is David Bianco. Welcome back to the channel. Well, I spent a lot of time getting ready to prepare shootouts, and lately I've been off the air a bit because I've been moving rooms within the house to set up some equipment in a different room to have better sonics. I also have made a change in my system that I'll be sharing with you as well. But this particular shootout is honestly one I didn't plan. And I'm going to tell you how that came about next on the Safe and Sound Texas Audio Excursion. So in the midst of doing this room move and also finding some new speakers to pick up, I happened to run across a pressing on Mofi of a real classic and one that I've loved for decades, and I'll tell you my backstory on it. And I happened to see it listed on one of the Facebook groups for audiophile records. And the price seemed really reasonable, and when I checked into the seller, checked into the condition of the record, it was one I really couldn't pass up. And, you know, this album has an interesting title to it, and it's one of the best rock bands in the U.S. that I believe has come out from the 70s, and it is in fact Creedence Clearwater Revival, and the album is Cosmo's Factory. Now that name got kind of resurrected in the 90s, if you remember. Cosmo, that is.
Cosmo!
Cosmo? I got the first name.
What is it?
What?
Cosmo.
From now on, I'm Cosmo!
Cosmo's not exactly a name we hear a lot, of course. Had it on the title of this album, and in the Seinfeld series, Kramer's name was never exposed until the clips I showed you, where his mom exposed his name as Cosmo. Jerry, Elaine, and George have all been wanting to know what it was. So here we are, Cosmo's Factory, 5th LP by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Now I'm sure that's not where Cosmo Kramer was born. That was more something in Larry David's head and Jerry Seinfeld. But this was, in fact, the 5th album by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Came in July of 1970. Now, this had 11 tracks on it, and 6 of them were, in fact, singles that reached the top 5 of the Billboard Hot 100. Amazing. You know, those are the kind of things the Beatles were able to achieve. And it spent 9 consecutive weeks in the #1 position as an LP on the Billboard 200. So this album had a huge impact. And to me, it is one that I have enjoyed from the first time I ever heard it. Now, the album to me also has a special recollection because during the early 70s, I was helping out a restaurant that was in my town in Gary, Indiana, when they would go to the county fair. And that county fair, they had a booth there and they sold food. Their big thing was chili dogs. That was their big claim to fame. And so there was a ride nearby called the Himalaya. And it was like a very fast seated interior round ride, but it just went in a circle at very, very high speed. And they would play a very loud siren during it, but the main records that they were playing were Creedence Clearwater songs, with this one being the primary one that was there, and it had Ramble Tamble, I Heard It Through the Grapevine, 2 very long cuts that are on this record. And so whenever I hear this album, it reminds me of that time, and it's a great memory. But getting the Mofi of this to me was kind of a grail. I had kind of forgot pursuing it after a while because I never really would see it. So I saw it on Facebook, I bought it, got it, and I had just got setting up my system in my new room and brought in my new Polk Audio RTA 12s, which are one step up from the RTA 11s that I have had up to now. And so really for me, it was now a time to kind of hear how the room sounded and hear how these new speakers sounded. And I put this on, and I can tell you right from the start, I knew that this particular pressing and cut was in fact a step up from anything I'd heard before. Now I have the Steve Hoffman, Kevin Gray that was pressed by QRP, and it sounds amazing. It always has sounded amazing. But Creedence records have always had one stylistic thing that I've noticed, and that is the top end wasn't very strong. They were a little muddy there, and they also were in fact not real strong on separation and imagery within the soundstage. They were always a little bit lackluster in that regard. And this pressing of this album tore the sheet off of the top end. It opened it up totally. And when I went and started to compare it, which I really hadn't planned to do, it was obvious. And I had my friend Brad come over, and he was just coming over to help me set up some things. And he too was amazed at the clarity and added this to his Grail list. And so this is an album that has now some identifying features and characteristics that really bring out the drum work and the cymbal work on the top end, and the tambourines were much more eloquent while retaining a really good tight bottom end with strong voice clarity. And so for me, it was a revelation. Something, I mean, I think I played this probably 5 or 6 times already since I've gotten it in-house. I mean, it just is that amazing. It's one of those records that I said, yeah, now I could use this as one that I would use to test systems or to test speakers, because it really is that strong. Now, the Hoffman Gray release of that is very good in a very broad range without too much on the top end. It's fair on the bottom end, good mid-range. So it's very strong, better than the OG, better than a German pressing that I have, better than a UK pressing that I have, and another ORG or Original Rock Classics, ORC, Original Rock Classics version that I have as well. That are all kind of vanilla, with the Hoffman Gray QRP version being the next step up. But to me, this is the one that really has made me really enjoy this. This album has come to life with this Mofi pressing. Amazing. So usually about now I'd be putting up some numbers for you to look at. And frankly, all I can say is, you know, the Mofi pretty well rang out 10s across the board. Quiet vinyl, bass, mid, highs. I mean, the highs were just 10 plus. Imaging, really just stellar. You know, the closest again was the Hoffman Gray mastering that was pressed on QRP at QRP, and you know, even it doesn't barely really get 9s almost, even as far as sonics go, because these albums sonically were always wanting, and it goes below that from there. You know, probably in the 7s on some of the OGs and the EU presses that I had. So at the end of the day, it's not really even close to even discuss numerically. If you love this album and you haven't heard the Mofi, you really will be in for a treat if you're able to get your hands on one. I certainly wasn't expecting this to be anything of this type of a difference, but it was. And I'm so glad that I got it. So thankful that I got a copy that sounds really, really good, was well maintained, and can enjoy it for years to come. So that's how I see it on this one. As always, if you haven't subscribed, please press on the bell below to get all notifications, and thumbs up or likes are appreciated, as are your comments. Let me know what you think. Have you heard the Mofi before? What do you think generally about Creedence recordings as a whole? Would love to hear from you. So until we catch you next time on our next audio excursion for Safe and Sound Texas, have a good one and take care, everybody.